Hey, Falcons and NFL fans. Welcome to another episode of NFL's Jocks and Pigskins with Tom Pollen. I'm Dave Holcomb. We're missing Chris today, but he's here with us in spirit. And we apologize for starting a few minutes late here today, but we got some breaking news that we were trying to gather some additional information on. Not a whole lot of details yet, but what we do know is very positive. Jeff Okudah, the new cornerback that the Falcons acquired from the Lions back in April before the draft, suffered an injury to his ankle yesterday, had to leave the field on the cart, didn't have any word other than he had to leave on a cart yesterday. Well, Arthur Smith told reporters 10, 15 minutes ago that injury is not season ending. He expects Okudah to be back around the beginning of the season.
Yeah, great news, because I was worried. I thought he might have, they were talking about ankle. I thought he might have had another Achilles injury. And because he's already had one.
Yeah.
That knocked him out for a season. So this is great news. He's not going to be back for the start of the season, but he will be back in season. So we are going to see Jeff Okudah on this team.
Yeah, and it's disappointing that he won't begin the season, it sounds like. We don't have exactly what the injury he's dealing with, what it is. This is a cornerback that's missed 25 games in his first 3 seasons. So this was kind of the risk that the Falcons were taking by trading him. A small risk because it was only a 5th-round pick that they gave up for him. But just counting on him being a starter is a risk because of the injury past. But I still can't help but be positive because of, again, thinking that this was going to be a lot more serious than it sounds like it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, and I felt bad for the guy because he's been working so hard. He's been, just given the extra effort, trying to make something out of this chance that the Falcons are giving him. And you hate to see that when somebody's really putting in the work and trying to give his new team his best effort. And it was rough to see him go down. So it's good news to know he's going to be back.
We'll talk more about Jeff Okudah, but welcome on to Atlanta Sports Unlimited YouTube channel. Give us a like, subscribe. This is my first episode back in a while, Tony. Thank you for welcoming me back. And we're going to talk a lot about Arthur Blank today as well, in addition to Jeff Okudah. That was originally what we were going to lead off the show with, what Arthur Blank said this week in a not so subtle way, putting some pressure on Arthur Smith. At least that's what we think. We'll tell you why in a little bit. And we'll also get to, your comments and any other topics that you might want to get to around the league.
Well, I tell you, Tony, and it's great to see him today. Acknowledges that you're back because he's been a big commenter on the show the last few weeks and helped me keep this show on track. So good to see you, Tony. And Pantera, the band is together again, huh?
It is, yeah. Well, Chris isn't here today, but yes, where the guys in front of the camera are back today.
Right.
I should take a moment to thank Mad Mike one more time. I thanked him off camera last week. I don't think I did that on the show, thanking him. I was unplugged quite a bit. So I think I saw one episode while I was away, and it was one of the episodes where you were by yourself. So I'm not sure how many episodes Mad Mike ended up doing for me. But I thank him for, the extra work he put in, helping us out on the channel and helping Tom out, keeping the show entertaining for you guys.
Oh, Mad Mike is just great. I mean, nothing else you can say about him. Stepping in the way he did, I got nothing but good things to say about Mad Mike. As a matter of fact, you go to his channel here on YouTube, subscribe, and get a lot of great insight from him. So, but I want to thank him for being here to help out. Yes.
And we've got some more comments coming in. Keep them rolling all hour long. We want to hear from you guys. Brian says, welcome back. Thank you, Brian. Baby's good. Shannon is doing the heavy lifting. I'll be honest. She's doing the heavy lifting on maternity leave, and that's going to end though in 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
And we have hired a nanny through like a nanny service that Shannon found, and I was there for the nanny interviews. We did a couple of interviews FaceTime and then met a couple at our house. So we'll have a nanny in 3 days a week, just in the afternoon, starting August 21st. That's Shannon's first day back at work. And that'll be an adjustment period for her going back to work and not being around the baby all the time. And then I'll be taking care of the baby a lot more. So that'll be, ask me how the baby is in 3 weeks, Brian.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be great, Dave. You're gonna love it. It's fantastic. So you're gonna be great at it. Don't sweat it.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app, use your promo code ASU. That gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. So some free money. There aren't any NFL bet entries that you can have in the app yet, but it's coming soon, guys. I mean, we had the Hall of Fame game on Thursday. Preseason football is like days away.
Yeah,
coming up really soon. And
a week from yesterday, we get the Falcons against the Dolphins.
There you go. So yeah, before we'll have some football to discuss next week, an actual game.
Yes, actually,
on the show
right
next week. Yeah, that's exciting.
It'll be fun.
So are there entries that you can put down? Some money for with preseason football, or do you have to wait for regular season?
You have to wait for regular season. However, there are some NFL regular seasonal bets that I've been kind of feeding to the audience every week. Desmond Ridder, they have at 2,575.5 passing yards for the season. So you can go over and under on that. They have season totals for Bijan Robinson, 1,099.5 yards. So you can get on some interesting season bets, over the course of the year, and just interesting if you feel like getting in early on the 2023 NFL season. Also have cricket, and
I have missed your cricket references.
India is playing West Indies, so might want to get in on that.
Right.
CFL, the lacrosse, the Whip Snakes, the Chrome, Redwoods, they're all playing this week. So a lot of good stuff. Go on the site. There's plenty of interesting player props that you can get in on.
Yeah, and I think Michael has a new promo code for us, ASU, and then 3 fire emojis. I like that. I think maybe we can make that our for every fire emoji you add promo code, that's an extra $5.
Yeah,
maybe that should be the new rule from Prize Picks.
I would love that. That would be great.
But no, there's no fire emojis in the actual promo code. No exclamation point either. It's just ASU.
Yep.
And that'll get you a 100% match on your first deposit in Prize Picks. So try it out today if you haven't already.
Yeah, just give it a look. Plenty of things to get involved in. So Major League Baseball, you're heavy into right now. So a lot of options on baseball.
Braves smacking the Cubs yesterday.
Oh, be quiet. The Cubs. The Cubs were tired because they put up so many runs against the Cincinnati Reds pitching staff.
Well,
their arms were exhausted, and it gets rough when you face that many. You go up to the plate so often, you're swinging so often. It's like batting practice. The arms get tired after a while. So we'll see what happens today.
Well, I'll say that's not necessarily a bad thing because the Reds might be the only team I dislike more than the Cubs. So, I mean, if those two teams faced in the championship series, that would be rough.
What is it about the Cubs? The Cubs are fantastic. I've
We
been watching them since the late 1960s.
we don't have enough time for me to explain my dislike for the Cubs.
All right.
But one other house cleaning item. I received a call from my brother-in-law last night, and he calls me pretty regularly, giving me updates on. Speaking of baseball, my nephew is really into baseball, gotten into it big time this year. Really, maybe the end of last year and this year, and he's on travel teams. I think maybe AAU equivalent teams, but they haven't actually used the term AAU. Maybe that's not a thing anymore. I don't know. Kind of been out of the youth baseball scene for a while,
Right.
and playing Little League spring. Anyway, he called me not to talk about baseball yesterday, but him and his family are coming down here to visit Shannon and I a week and a half from now. So I think yesterday was his last day at work. Told some of his work buddies, "Hey, I'm heading out for vacation. One of the things we're doing is we're going to see the Yankees in Atlanta, and I'm going with my brother-in-law and my son. So yeah, it's my nephew. So three of us are going."
Yeah.
And one of his buddies is a Braves fan. And then my brother-in-law, or I guess his friend, was saying that he follows all of the Braves beat writers and the guys talking about it. And he said one of the people he follows is a guy named Dave Holcomb.
Really?
Now, I don't cover the Braves, so I don't know if he also follows us here on the show. I don't know if, like, Tony, or do you work with my brother-in-law? I don't. Brian, do you work? Because I don't. His name is Sergeant Collins from Bear Mountain Recruiting Company, and my brother-in-law asked me to give him a shout out on Twitter, but he didn't have his Twitter handle. My brother-in-law is not on Twitter, so I'm giving him a shout out on the show. If for some amazing reason you are listening, and you know my brother-in-law, Tyler Doran, let's connect. Please let me know that, because that's just like the ultimate small world moment if this is true.
Yes, it is. That's great. I love it. Yeah, it's amazing how you can come up with those, how these little incidents can happen. So, but that's great. I hope you get in touch. Should be fun.
Yeah, I hope so. And if he's not here or not listening on replay, I got to find him on Twitter. Maybe I follow him and I don't know, or he follows me, but whatever. Yeah, I'm hoping I can connect with him.
Right.
Like I can connect. I'd love to connect with all kinds of Falcons, Braves and Falcons fans, since I've been going to a lot of Braves games the last couple of years and following the team pretty closely now. So, but let's talk some Falcons. Let's get back into the Okudah injury. And I actually have I want to kick off with Gary's comment here. This is about injuries overall in the NFL. And he says he's getting tired of hearing so-and-so was carted off on a cart during preseason practice. Heart goes out to injured players. But is there any way to understand earlier how bad injuries are? This relates to Okudah's injury because it didn't end up being a season-ending injury.
Mm-hmm.
And I get what you're saying, Gary, that it seems like the NFL teams, like, you suffer a hangnail, you're leaving the field on a cart. And did I just not notice this before, or is this a new thing this year? Because it really seems like like lots of players are leaving on carts, and not necessarily because of season-ending injuries. CJ Gardner-Johnson from the Lions left on a cart like the second day of practice, and he was back the next day or 2 days later or something.
I think the cart is more precautionary. You don't want to make an injury worse by trying to walk the guy off the field. So it's just a precautionary thing to get the cart out there, bring him in. And I don't think it's a bad thing. Just, as I say, you don't want to make the injury worse. You don't want to make anything worse. Yeah. So wheel him in and get an idea of the injury and what's happening. And Arthur Smith said in a press conference, I think the other day, that he's not trying to be he's not trying to hide the injury or what the injury could be. He says there's no competitive advantage to it right now. He says, we just don't know. So, he's like, we don't know what's up with Okudah, but again, I would rather see guys take it off on the cart and then come back even if they come back the next day, and maybe it's because they took him off on the cart, didn't walk him back.
Perhaps
don't make the injury worse.
I'm gonna, reveal or open the curtain a little bit behind, and reveal a little bit of the Wizard of Oz here for why we're maybe seeing some of these cart. It's getting out of hand with the hearing about players leaving on carts. I think that's true. It's good for teams to be to have precautions about things.
Mm-hmm.
But with the media, you just see cart, for heaven's sakes, like it's become a verb.
Yes.
To say a player was carted, like that's net. If you go into the dictionary, cart is not a verb, but it's become so common in our sports writing that we use it as a verb now, that a player was carted away, and it's just a synonym for suffered a very serious injury.
Serious injury.
And
during the season, that's what it is.
Right. Right. But right now, yes, teams are back on the field. They're practicing. There's a lot more to write about for the media now than 2-3 weeks ago. But there still isn't a ton going on.
No.
We still don't have games or ton of transactions. If we have transactions, they're small guys, undrafted free agents being let go or signed because somebody was injured or whatever. So a popular story to write is a player leaving with maybe a serious injury.
Yeah.
And the cart is a, serious injury possibility. So that's why we're seeing all of these stories. I don't know if it's more prevalent this year than last year. I don't know. It seems like it is.
Yeah, it seems like it is. But as I say, and I know people are looking for something to write about. Believe me.
Yeah.
We both have gone through this, Dave.
Right.
Writing in the off season. It's miserable to try and find not necessarily, little things, but smart things. Not trying to, fill your time with clickbait, but actually trying to find something smart to say about what's going on off the field. And about a month ago, I had something to say about clickbait on this site because I was getting tired of seeing some of the clickbait we were getting. So, but, it's not easy. So it's easy for them to say, speculate, this is rough. Okudah's missed big time the last couple of seasons. And
it doesn't even have to be clickbait for it to be a story, though, because he was carted off the field.
I'm not saying this is clickbait. I'm saying it's other things. But he's carted off the field. What else are you going to say?
His injury passed, and I wrote this story yesterday for allfalcons.com, and you put in a reaction from the beat writers who saw the injury, and those beat writers had very concerned reactions. They thought it was a serious injury when it happened, and there was video from WSB TV that the Falcons secondary players took a knee and prayed for Okudah. Who are you laughing at?
Jay Black. Hello, Super Falcon fan cat.
Oh, saying that.
Zozo's up here.
Yeah.
He's made her appearance today.
So there was video of players taking a knee and praying. So, obviously, for the players to do that, they thought there was a chance that it was going to be serious. So writing about it was definitely newsworthy. It was an injury that looked like it was serious. And anytime a player leaves on a cart, maybe journalists need to get a little bit smarter and see that, like, okay, the cart was really for precaution. It wasn't necessarily needed, and I'm not going to sensationalize this. But again, the writers are looking for page views because a lot of their livelihood is page views. So we're writing about people leaving with injuries, and it's not inaccurate because they are leaving on carts.
Right. But again, yeah, I think it is more common lately just because you don't want to make the injury worse. Why not take them off on the cart and then we can go from there. It's just a precaution that I think it's a smart thing for NFL teams.
Yeah.
Go ahead and take them on the cart. But yeah, but sports writers are very conditioned to speculate how serious the injury could be if they see a cart. And
right. Yeah.
And I think it's something we're going to have to live with during this, training camps.
Right. And I think if you're a fan that's annoyed by it, like Gary, you just have to recognize that a cart doesn't, in August, a player leaving on a cart doesn't mean that it's season-ending injury. You need to wait a couple days to see exactly how serious it is. Like I said, I'm following 3 teams closely right now: the Falcons, Lions, and Steelers. Gardner Johnson left on a cart, was back the next day. Okudah left on a cart. It's going to be back sometime in September, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Corey Trice, the undrafted rookie that they've liked at cornerback, left on a cart. He's out for the season. So there's the span of what you could get with players leaving on carts. And I was talking to Gary the other day and told him, yes, he left on a cart, the Steelers cornerback, but we have to wait and see exactly how serious it is. And that one turned out to be serious.
Yes. Yeah. You always worry about it, but at least Okudah is going to be back. It's probably, I saw one of the comments earlier talking about probably a high ankle sprain, and I think that's probably what we're looking at. So,
yeah, Brian had a comment a little bit ago. He says that's what he thinks the injury is.
And it sounds correct. It sounds like that's something that would have him out for most of the training camp and bringing him back about, 3-4 weeks in the season.
Yeah, Gary's asking you a question that we've kind of already answered, but I don't think they've been this common. I think this is new. I think this is new this year.
Yeah, I do too. I haven't seen so many players carted off the field in training camp as we have this year. But, teams value these guys. I mean, these guys are part of the plan. They're part of what you feel you're building around. So yeah, you're going to expect the worst and use the cart. So, but I agree with you, Dave. I think this is a new thing that NFL teams are doing. But I don't have a problem with it. It's just rough to wait a couple of days to find out if it's a serious injury or not.
Right. Yeah. We're already at the bottom of the hour. Let's reset the show here for a couple minutes. Today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app. Use promo code ASU. That gets you 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. And if you joined us late, shame on you because we were late too.
Yeah.
But if you're joining our show after we started, we have breaking news at the top of the hour. Jeff Okudah is okay. I've gotten a couple of questions about the people missing the Okudah news, and he does have some kind of ankle injury. We don't know the exact specifics yet, but Arthur Smith provided a positive update about a half hour ago now that Okudah will not miss the whole season and that he will be back sometime around the beginning of the regular season.
Yeah. So about the best you can hope for. And
I mean, considering if you're brand new to the story, you didn't know about the injury, Okudah left on a cart yesterday, and beat writers that were on site and players' reactions thought it was going to be pretty serious. So
the players' reactions is what got me.
Yeah.
Forming a ring and having a team prayer about Okudah being. That's when I start thinking, maybe things are more serious than what we expect. when the players take a knee and pray. But, fortunately, and as I say, I'm happy for Okudah because I think he's been one of the hardest working guys in this camp. He knows he has something to prove. And I think it's a relief for him. It's not a relief that he's going to miss the rest of the preseason.
Right. Yeah. There is a big negative with him being out. This is, and he's had reoccurring serious injuries where even if he gets back on the field, there's always that, concern that he's going to suffer a different injury.
Right.
But he's going to miss. He's trying to transition to a new defense, new team, new coordinator. Not going to have the rest of the offseason, preseason to do that.
Right. I think he'll go through walkthroughs. He'll be in the special. He'll be in the defensive backs room to learn what he can, and as I say, he'll be on the field to kind of watch and see how things are working out. And he's not going to be completely in the dark, but nothing replaces the fact of being on the field and actually doing it. So that's what he's missing, and that's going to be rough. But he'll be back, and he's highly talented. He had a good season for Detroit last year. So, there is talent there. I like, I like the fact that he's going to be back. I think he's still going to make an impact on this team.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. He has the talent to do that, for sure.
Oh, Gary.
Yes, I was about to put that on the screen. There's definitely seems to be a growing demand for carts.
The carts.
Yeah.
Loving that.
A couple other comments about Okudah and what to expect when he returns. Tony says we do not need to rush the rookie Phillips into that number 2 spot while Okudah is out. Keep him where he's at. I agree, Tony. I mean, you got Mike Hughes, and you brought him up in your next comment. Veteran can very easily slide in that number 2 spot if Okudah misses games in September. So
he slides up from the nickel into one of the regular, one of the corners. So
right,
that's not a bad thing. He's got the experience for it.
And then I guess I thought we had other comments, but I guess we do, all from Tony, though. Tony also says, with Jeff Okudah going down, we now have to keep Cornell Armstrong. We should also keep Darren Hall and Trey Flowers. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Okudah's injury impacts who they keep on the 53-man roster at the end of the month. And, of course, how the rest of the players at other positions, how they perform in preseason games and practices, and how the cornerbacks perform will impact that decision too.
Right. So, but yeah, you hang on to the guys. You don't, as I say, there's no rush to do anything right now. Let's see what they do in the preseason. Let's see how people perform. And we're going to get our first look at how some of these guys perform this week when Atlanta goes to, when the Falcons go to Miami's training camp and they have a couple of padded practices together. So I'm going to be fascinated to see how both teams react. I've been watching some interviews with the players this week, and they're all thrilled to be going to Miami, do some of these dual practices. They say they're tired of hitting each other. So, it's going to be nice to see how they react to somebody else's system and other players that they haven't been seeing every day.
Right.
And we'll start getting a feel for how these, the other corners are coming along and what's happening. And I'm looking forward to that. And
in addition to those practices you're talking about with the Dolphins, they play them in their first preseason game on Friday as well. So yeah, it should be an exciting week coming up. As exciting as it gets in August anyway, with NFL football.
Well, hey, we've already had one game, so that's always nice to see. It's always nice to get that first game out of the way.
Yeah.
And get moving from there. But we've had our game, and we'll see how it goes from there. we're going to get a good test of these Atlanta defensive backs with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
True.
Having to cover those two.
Yeah. I saw this ranking. I forget who it was from. Ranking the best wide receiver pairs of all time. And I think Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill were on the list. I didn't necessarily agree with this list. Like anybody who's like they've played one season together, they don't qualify to be allowed on the list.
Well, right. I mean, one season, yes, they had a big season last year. You know, they both played big parts in Miami's offense, but yeah, they're not ready to be on that list yet.
Yeah.
Give them a couple of seasons.
And I believe T. Higgins and Jamar Chase were also already on the list.
All right. I don't have a problem with that. They've been together for a couple of seasons. And Burrows really loved having both of them in his offense. He takes advantage of both of them. So
but all time,
I don't have as much a problem with that.
You think they're a top 10 receiver duo all time?
Oh, all time? No, not yet. Not yet. No.
That's what I'm saying. It was all time. And the only wide receiver duo they had, I think, actually there might have been one other one that I didn't really know, which is why I'm forgetting about it. And then the only other like old wide receiver duo that like before I started watching football was Lynn Swann and John Stallworth were on the list.
Oh, that's a great one.
Which is they're great.
Absolutely.
No, I'm sorry. I'm also forgetting I'm forgetting about I think number one was Jerry Rice and John Taylor.
John Taylor, yeah.
Yeah, forgetting his name for a second. And Randy Moss was on the list twice, which was pretty cool. Randy, it was him and Chris Carter, and then him and Wes Welker. I forget if it was Moss and Carter at number one, or if it was Rice and Taylor at number one. It was one of them was number one, and I think Moss and Welker were number three.
Okay. I wasn't as impressed with Moss and Welker, but yeah, Moss and Carter, that was a wild combo. So very impressed with that. Where did they put Mark Duper and Mark Clayton?
That was the duo that I didn't know as much about, admittedly, and they were on the list. I don't remember where, but they were on the list.
Oh, Marino loved them. So Marino made a career out of throwing to those two guys.
I don't think I'm throwing shade at the Dolphins. Maybe that's appropriate since the Falcons are playing the Dolphins this week. I don't know those receivers, probably because they didn't win the Super Bowl. So
that could be.
Yeah.
Came close. That was the frustrating thing is Don Shula decided that with Marino that he was more concentrated on the passing game, and they didn't have a runner good enough to really elevate that offense into what I think would have been a Super Bowl offense. They never found a running back to go along with Dan Marino.
Right.
And that was the problem. That was always the problem with that team.
Yeah. And the year after he retired, they brought in Ricky Williams.
Right. Exactly.
I believe the quote from Marino was like, why didn't we have Ricky Williams when I was playing? I played for like 2 decades. You couldn't find Ricky Williams while I played.
Couldn't find a running back to save their lives. And, partially I blame Shula for that. Yeah, he's got a lot of input into player personnel decisions. And, at some point you would think he would constantly trying to get a runner there that could offset what Marino and Duper Clayton were doing with that team. That's how Shula won his Super Bowls. Outstanding running. And,
the 3-headed running backs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, it's surprising to see Landry go so far away from the running game that he completely left Marino kind of on an island. If Marino didn't move the offense didn't move.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Marino was a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Right. But even with that great pair of wide receivers that admittedly I didn't really know, still wasn't able to win the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So I forget how we got on this.
I don't know.
Oh, we were talking about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, they were on that list.
And interesting seeing that the Falcons corners, how they react this week. They're probably not going to see much of Waddle and Hill, maybe a series of Waddle and Hill, because Tua's probably going to get a series, and he's going to want his top receivers out there. But, it's going to be fun, again, to see them in practice against Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So I'm looking forward to it.
We had a question from Michael. Who are the best available CBs on the market? There's not a whole lot out there, Michael. Byron Jones is listed as the top guy available on Spot Rack. I'm looking at the cornerbacks available right now on that website. William Jackson, who was former first-round pick but didn't even play a game for the Steelers last year, got released. Bradley Roby, Ronald Darby. I mean, those guys used to be pretty solid, great cornerbacks, but now 29 and 31 years old. And then the fifth guy listed is Casey Hayward, who was on the Falcons, and the Falcons didn't bother to bring back. So to me, that's a pretty strong indication that there's not much out there. And I don't think the Falcons are looking for another cornerback of that caliber or that stature anyway. They've got the guys they have in their room. Right. And they feel pretty comfortable about those guys, and Okudah's not out the whole season, so that's
right, exactly.
Back,
he's coming back. I like what the Falcons already have at corner and defensive back, and no, I don't see them going after one. I don't think they need to. So you play next man up, and you go from there. And when Okudah comes back, then you're that much stronger. No reason to bring one in. And as you just said, there's nobody to bring in. Just nobody out there you want to bring in.
Right. Well, let's talk about Arthur Blank and what he had to say about Arthur Smith. I think he was talking about Arthur Smith this week, but he was talking about the overall, status of his organization, the entire organization, not just the team, the organization going into the 2023 season. And there were a couple of, eye-popping remarks from Blank when he spoke to reporters on August 1st. And one in particular really caught my eye, Tom, and I wrote about this on allfalcons.com.
Mm-hmm.
The quote from Blank, "This is the third year of a 3-year plan. What I see that I like a lot is that Coach Smith and Terry, the general manager, Terry Fontenot, laid out a very careful, thoughtful, kind of methodical plan of what they were going to do with the roster. And I think they have been very disciplined about moving in that direction." I can't say I disagree with the latter part of that comment.
Yeah, yes, I agree with the latter part.
Been very careful and thoughtful and methodical plan that Fontenot and Smith have executed the last 2.5 years to get this team out of salary cap hell and into a situation where they have all these young weapons on offense. They've got a couple of core pieces on defense they're trying to build around. They've got a nice reclamation project and Okudah, cornerback, and they've surrounded them with got older veterans. They're hoping find the fountain of youth, Calais Campbell, Bud Dupree, and it's a, they haven't. I don't know if I want to say Band-Aids, but stronger Band-Aids for that defense than just the what we've seen the last few years because of the salary cap problems. They were actually able to address needs, and they didn't address all the needs like I would have liked, honestly, in the draft. But I still think this team is in a much better position than it was 12 months ago.
So do I.
And it's because of that methodical, very careful planning from Fontenot and Smith. Yes. But the beginning of that is what everyone should, I think everyone's kind of focused on, and everyone I think should be focused on, that this is the third year of a 3-year plan, really is a strong indication from Blank that hey, I want to see significant improvement this year. Otherwise, I mean, am I going to buy in on another year of this methodical, careful planning from who I have in charge right now? That's how I definitely view the comments from Blank about it being a third year of a 3-year plan. What did you think when you read that, Tom?
I think he wants to win. He wants a winning season this year. I think, he's seen the improvement that Fontenot's made. By the way, I watched Fontenot's press conference. He didn't seem too concerned. Fontenot kind of pushed it all up. Yeah. I think what's Arthur Blank is saying right now is, I want to see a winning season. I want to see some results from all this building. The problem is you've only had this season to build. You've only had this one-off season.
And that's why I think the beginning of that comment is way off base. That it was a major rebuild when this team when Fontenot and Smith arrived. And we've talked about this a lot, since the beginning of this of this show. This organization didn't want to use the word rebuild, but that's what it was. It was not a retooling. It was a flat out, we're trying to rebuild with Matt Ryan the first season, but then after the Deshaun Watson stuff went down, it was just, okay, we're going into full on rebuild mode. And I think they should have gone even further on the rebuild train, because Desmond Ridder could have played more last year, but they still went with the roster decisions they made, and they took the salary cap hits with the Julio Jones and the Matt Ryan trades immediately, so they could be set up to win in 2023 and 2024.
And by the way, Arthur Blank was largely responsible for the Julio Jones and Matt Ryan salary cap hits. So let's look at that too. Arthur Blank wanted to reward two of his greatest players, but at the end of their careers, when they were falling a little bit, the Super Bowl window may have been open a crack, but wasn't quite wasn't where it had been. And Blank kind of stepped in and gave a couple of big contracts out that ended up handcuffing the team.
It was prior to the 2019 season. They were only 1 year removed from making the playoffs at that point. They missed the playoffs in 2018 because they had a bunch of injuries on defense. The offense played well, and the offensive line struggled. But Matt Ryan was still a high-caliber player. Julio Jones was still good. So you're right. They gave out those contracts. I think Matt Ryan's contract was before that, actually. But Julio Jones, I believe, got his big deal that offseason. And they didn't really make any additions in free agency on defense, partially because they didn't have the money to do that.
Right.
They were counting on Neal and I'm blanking on the other safety's name. That was really good safety. And then Deion Jones also had injuries in 2018. They were counting on those guys coming back and being themselves again.
Yeah.
And they weren't. They weren't quite as good as they were before the injuries.
No, Deion Jones never came back, actually. I think he's at Carolina now. The Browns gave up on him last year.
He signed with Carolina this week.
Mm-hmm. So
thank you, Marcel.
Thank you, Marcel. Yeah.
That was the other safety I was trying to think of.
They didn't come through. They didn't come back as strong, and it really damaged the team as far as their Super Bowl outlook. And I know Arthur Blank wants that Super Bowl.
Sure, of course. He should want it.
Yeah, he should want it. But let your guys do their job. You hired Fontenot, you hired Smith. Well, Fontenot hired Smith. But you hired these guys to do their job. Let them do their job. I would rather Arthur Smith sit back in the owner's box and watch games.
Arthur Blank.
Yeah, Arthur Blank. Yes. Sit in the owner's box, watch games, be the owner. Let your guys do their jobs. Because I think Fondo's done a great job this last summer putting together a team that I believe is going to be competitive in this division.
Yeah, I think so too. But I have a question for Brian. He says, I think what blank meant was 3 years become truly competitive and relevant. I guess my question is, what are we going to define as truly competitive and relevant? Like if they win the NFC South at 9-8, like the Buccaneers did last year, the Buccaneers were 8-9. But if they have a similar record and win the division, like is that truly competitive? What are we looking for? Does it have to be a 10-win season this year to be a success in Arthur Blank's mind? That's why I think the comment is so interesting, and I kind of just think of eye-popping, because I think he's raising expectations by saying this is a third year of a 3-year plan, that we need to see results this year. And I don't think we're at that point. I get it. I'm not a Falcons fan, so it's probably more frustrating for Falcons fans to be like, no, I don't want another year of 7-10. And I get that. But if you see positive improvements in Desmond Ridder and in your young offensive playmakers, and you go 8-9, 7-10, 9-8, isn't that going to be a positive step? Isn't that? I think it is, especially with where this team was, and they're being handcuffed with their ability to build the team the last 2 years. And in some ways, this is Smith's first season where you can really judge him, because he has all of the players that are his on offense.
Right. He has everybody he wants. Everybody that basically the same kind of offense that he built in Tennessee. Yeah. This is the same kind of thing. He's got players who can play all over the field. He's got offensive. He can line up Bijan Robinson in the slot. He can line up Jonnu Smith outside, inside, against a tackle. He can do a lot of things. And the Falcons offense is calling this a positionless offense. That's how this runs. And I think that's what Arthur Smith wants. He's going to run a lot of motion. He's going to do, run a lot of different variety. And let's not forget Cordell Patterson, who's still there.
Yeah. Who invented the positionless position.
Yeah.
So
you got to, Peter King, I saw an interview with Peter King. He was at Flowery Branch last week. He said the Falcons have the most diverse offensive personnel in the league, period, in the NFL. So he's very impressed with how this offense has been put together.
I believe that. But it's going to all come down to Desmond Ridder and his development.
King is high on that, too.
Okay, that's good.
King thinks that a lot of what Desmond Ridder can do is with Smith trying to give him confidence, swing passes, short outs, slants. You got a lot of guys who can do damage after the catch. I don't think Ridder needs to throw the ball 50 yards to be an effective quarterback. He's got guys who are good after the catch, and I think that's what's going to be a difference for this team this year. I talked about it a couple of weeks ago about their yards per attempt not being anywhere near where it needs to be for them to be a playoff team. 8 of the top 10 teams last year in yards per attempt went to the playoffs. So, but that doesn't mean that Ridder has to go deep downfield all the time. He can if he wants. He's got Pitts in London, but he doesn't have to. He's got guys he can also hit 8 to 10 yards and have them pick up yards as they run, because he's got after the catch guys. Yeah.
Yards per attempt takes into account yards after catch.
Yes, absolutely. Yards after catch, definitely. And, I think that's going to really help. And I think that's what Smith is going to concentrate on. Smith knows how to build a quarterback. He knows how to work with quarterbacks.
He does.
So I'm. It's going to be rough. Nobody knows what Desmond Ritter is going to be.
Right. Yeah.
But I think he's got a good chance to do something in this offense. I still love the fact that they like him. The offense likes him in the huddle. They rally around him. They are confident with him in the huddle. And you can't teach that. You can't teach that kind of charisma. Yeah, skills play a big part of it, but they are confident in what Ritter can do. And the offense is going to do everything they can to make this work because they do think highly of Ritter.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring up Ritter and say we don't know what he's going to be, because I get it. It's our job as sports commentators to make predictions and say what he's going to be. But at the end of the day, we really don't know. And if you want to be frustrated by that unknownness, I think that's fair.
Yeah, it is.
But he could be great. He could be awful. But I don't think he was awful though in his last 4 games last year.
No, he wasn't. And the way he engineered that last drive against the Arizona Cardinals to win that game, I think gave his teammates a lot of confidence. He didn't lose his head, didn't panic. The moment did not get too big for him. And that's one of the things you want to see with a young quarterback. Is the moment too big? Does he lose a little bit when there's a real moment, when you have to drive the team, when you're in a 2-minute drill, or you need to do some good things in the fourth quarter? I don't think the moment gets too big for Ritter, and I like that. And I think that's one of the positives you can look at going forward.
Arthur Blank also talked about Ritter on August 1st. He said, "We feel pretty strongly that he's going to be our quarterback of the future. We have to play games and we have to see, but we feel good about him." And he also talked about those young offensive weapons that Peter King likes so much. I think we have as many offensive tools as most, if not any team in the NFL today. And I like those comments. I think they're true. I like that Blank expressed confidence in Ritter, but also said, hey, we got to play games. We got to see how it goes. But I also think if you really want to read between the lines in a way, that those comments also put pressure on Arthur Smith, because he's saying, hey, we got these great offensive weapons.
We got the guy.
Hey, I like Desmond Ritter. I think he's going to be good. And if he's not good,
yes,
that's fall on Arthur Smith.
Right. It might. Yeah, I could see that. Definitely. It's unfortunate, but yeah, Smith has a lot of pressure on him. I don't think he's on the hot seat yet, but if that offense, the way they put it together, does not perform this year, he's definitely on the hot seat for 2024.
And I would agree with that. Yes. He's not on the hot seat right now, but yeah, he's got to perform to avoid the hot seat next year. It's basically how I look at it. It sounds like Brian agrees with us. He says they're safe for now. The key phrase in what Brian wrote, I think, is "for now" there at the end.
Yes.
It is. They are totally safe for now, as long as this year is not a disaster. I guess if it's a disaster, that's a different conversation at the end of.
Well, I think Blank is very disappointed if this team finishes below 500. And I think that's what Blank is going to, is he wants to see tangible proof that this team is better with what Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith have done with it.
I see why he wants that, and we all want tangible results, but sometimes it's just tangible results can be misleading too, because I think they should have a winning record, because I like the team better than last year, but they're in a weak division. They have kind of a weaker schedule, I believe. They're playing all 1:00 games, so they don't have any unusual scheduling or a Thursday night short week. They'll have no excuses whatsoever with the schedule for why they don't win more if they don't win.
Right.
They're very favorable schedule, and I think that schedule could lead to I don't know, maybe even a 10-win season, 9 wins, 10 wins, and that's great. But I think it's more important what we see on the field versus that tangible results.
And Arthur Smith talked about that too in one of his press conferences. Let's see the improvement on the field. Let's see these guys moving forward. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's see these guys. I want to see these guys, how they react now compared to how they react as the season keeps going, and if they keep building on what we're trying to do here. So, I think Smith is looking at that. That's the only realistic way you can look at it.
Absolutely. From a coach, I think that's absolutely the way you got to look at it. And blank, I don't know. Marcel puts a interesting comment here. He wants to fill the seats. Yeah.
It's part of it, Marcel.
That's part of it for him. Yeah. Maybe he wants a few more wins or a few more touchdowns, a few more big plays on offense so he can fill those seats. But I've always thought if you win games, you're going to fill seats. So, and I don't think the Falcons are going to win 13, 14 games and be in the championship game this year.
Although Mad Mike did. He said Falcons NFC championship game.
Did he?
Yes, he did.
Wow. Okay. That's bold. That's bold.
He admitted that. He said it's bold.
Okay, yeah. That's fair. I think I could be totally wrong with this, and we got to wrap up the show, so maybe people can get back to us next week about this. But I think Falcons fans, share Blank's expectations. They share I'm running out of patience. We haven't been in the playoffs in 6 years. I don't really care that we were in salary cap hell the last 2 years. We've got all these players on offense. You're telling me that Desmond Ridder is going to be good. So go make the playoffs.
Right.
And I think there will be a disappointment if they're not in the playoffs.
Don't overlook the defensive front that they built.
Yeah.
So, can't overlook that. They've done a heck of a lot on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. So I think Blank, to Brian's point, I think Blank and Falcons fans will be disappointed if they don't finish above 500.
Same here in Chicago. They have the same kind of expectations. This is the year. They're expecting to see big expectations out of the Bears. So, and it'll be disappointing if the Bears don't, if they don't fulfill it. So it's the same thing. The Falcons are in the same boat. Fans want to see that improvement. I think the fans are tired of seeing this team be near the bottom of the NFL. And they want to have something they can root for going forward. Know that things are getting better going forward.
Marcel agrees with me on they've got to perform, especially on defense with the big money spent. Brian disagrees maybe a little bit. He says he does care about the situation that Fontenot and Smith arrived in, have to be patient. I think so too. I think you got to be patient, and just because they don't win 9 games or make the playoffs this year, that doesn't mean it was a big disappointment. It's all situational. What happened during the season, we have to wait and see.
However, I think Brian is in the minority among Falcons fans as far as that goes.
I would say so too, but I'd love to hear more reaction from you guys next week when we're on the show again. We'll be back here next Saturday at noon Eastern time to break down the Falcons' first preseason game. Today's show was brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app, use our promo code ASU, get you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. You can follow us on YouTube, give us a like, and subscribe to our channel, Atlanta Sports Unlimited, other Falcons content on the channel. And we'll see you next Saturday.
Have a great week, everyone.